Hello, everyone. This is Rebecca Greene for the Whiny Palooza podcast, and I am so excited. We get to talk to the amazing Dr. Kendra Read today. Dr. Kendra, thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, it's our honor. We are so excited to get to hear from you today. Let me tell you about this fantastic lady. She is a clinical psychologist and vice president of care strategy and delivery at Brightline, which you can see her background if you're watching us, where she helps children, teens, and families navigate anxiety, OCD, ADHD, depression, and everyday behavioral health challenges. She previously led anxiety and mood programs at Seattle Children's Hospital and taught psychotherapy through the University of Washington School of Medicine. Dr. Reed specializes in evidence based care for youth anxiety and OCD, with a strong focus on helping parents understand what their children are really experiencing and how to support them with confidence. So now our listeners know why I've been so excited to talk to you because this is such a needed topic. We need you. I hate how prevalent I'm seeing this stuff just around me in my community. And, I also think, parents need your help even with how they're labeling it. And this is no judgment, parents. Sometimes I fall into this trap too. So, what are we missing as parents when we look at anxiety, ADHD, OCD as bad behavior instead of something like our child struggling?
Oh, that is such a good question. And I think you're right to start with there's no judgment here. None of our
Yes.
kids, and I'm a mom of two, right? My kids are 5 and 7. None of our
Oh,
kids came with instruction
no.
manuals, right? We are all learners in this field, all of us, even those who do this professionally, we are all still constantly learning. So I think the first thing I want everybody to do at home is to step back and lend themselves some grace as they think about how they've been thinking about things and expanding how they might approach things differently in the future. So I think one of the things that I see families overlook is that our kids are learning. Our kids, they are developing. We see these big moments with them, big emotions at times when they just honestly don't know what else to do. Apologies if you see my dog flash into the background. She really
We
wants to be
love
a part of the
dogs.
podcast.
We welcome dogs to the podcast.
She knows a lot about anxiety, our dear Luna.
Oh,
So our kids are still developing. They are still learning. They are figuring out this world, and their brains are still developing. So while they have an active amygdala that's, sending a lot of emotional signals to their body, their prefrontal cortex, which is sort of a down regulator of that amygdala response, that emotional response, is still developing. So they're still getting a handle of, when should I do something different in this situation? What can I do with this big emotion in this moment that's going to best serve me? A lot of that takes experience, just the development of time over time. Um, and our kids are just not born with this, the hindsight, foresight, and insight in a single moment to be able to respond the same way that we might think is the most helpful. So
mm,
they need to go through these learning moments also. So I think that's one thing, is that there is no child that goes through life without a big emotional moment here or there. Um, and they're not trying to be bad, right? They are doing the best that they can with the resources they have. And sometimes it is our job as the people who guide them and support them, to help them find other ways of approaching a situation. Um, One of the other things I see that parents overlook is that emotions are not bad. The emotions are not our enemy. So often parents come into our offices, or they express a lot of concern when I chat with them, about the fact that their child has experienced big sadness, big anxiety. And that in and of itself isn't necessarily always the the bad thing, just the experience of an emotion, because we all are human beings. We have the opportunity to experience the breadth of human emotion. It's the frequency, the interference, and then the behaviors that come along with that that are really the triggers for this is something I want to change.
Mm.
But our lives cannot be so even keeled all the time where we don't experience big highs and big lows. We will all experience them. Um, and when parents, like, it is just incredibly hard. We are not built to tolerate our kids in distress. So it is completely understandable that when your child has some of these moments, you're like, oh, gosh, they feel anxious in this moment. And you're like, yes, I might expect that actually. I might expect some anxiety before a test or before a game. And that's not necessarily altogether a bad thing. And we can talk as we go along here about what are the times when we would consider this like a point where we might consider intervention. But that's just another piece I would want parents to hold. All of these emotions exist on a spectrum. All of these behaviors exist on a spectrum. Um, and it's really when we get to that point of interference when we start to really intervene. So, yeah, I guess that's one of the big pieces there. Gosh, I had another thought and I just left my brain about oh, I think the other thing is that these things are changeable. So that's the other thing I would just want parents to hold. Sometimes we tend to get stuck in our own worry thoughts about the fact that this has happened for our child. And I just want all of us to pause and note
Mm.
that like we are adaptable. Our brains are plastic. Like these things are changeable. We can work on change. If I didn't believe in change, if I didn't believe people could change, I would be completely out of a job. So I think that's another piece that I want parents to hold because sometimes like when these really hard moments are coming up, it's easy to get stuck in the like this is forever, this is constant, this is the always. And we miss the moments
So
where our
true.
kids are actually doing a really great job at something. Um, so that's a
I
start.
totally agree with everything you said, obviously. Such a good explanation. I think that it's so, all this, a lot of this stuff is normal.
Mhm.
And a lot of the stuff maybe has gone to a frequency that maybe isn't what we would label normal. So, how do we know like this is a normal childhood stress and this is something that needs more attention?
Oh, great question. We really look at, and as I mentioned, everything exists on a spectrum. Um, and we look at how how much something is interfering in someone's life and how much distress that they're experiencing as a result of this event. Like, so if we take separation, right? Separation anxiety as an
Mm.
example, it is really common to go through periods of separation anxiety for younger children. And we watch how this goes for them. We give them opportunities to practice being in situations where they can safely and adaptively separate. And we see how can they recover? How can they proceed? Does it get better over time? Um, and for some kids, the more that they are just in their everyday environment, the and based off of like sort of what they bring to the table themselves, their own temperament, their genetics, all sorts of different things, and what the environment brings for them. So, how the adults around them are interacting with them, whether they give them another opportunity to try again, even though it's been hard. Those things interact to then, for a certain group of kids, help this go better and the issue decreases. And for other kids, the issue persists or might even feel like it's worsening. So that's what I mean when I say like we want to watch it for a short period of time to
Mhm.
say, hey, is this something that we need to have more focus intervention around? Now, when I say watch it for a short period of time, I say that with a grain of salt because there are things that I would want all of our parents and caregivers in the room to know is just like a helpful way to promote a positive trajectory here for us. So we can talk about that later. But in general, that's what we think about when we think about the distinction between this range that is fairly typical for a lot of kids. And then when we start to get into the range where we think this might require more intervention, is how long it's been going on, the amount of distress and interference. Like, what are they not able to do? And also, not just what their kids are not able to do, but what is the family not able to do? Using separation anxiety is a really good example of that, where sometimes when a child is experiencing high levels of separation anxiety, it impacts a lot of the other caregivers in the family. You can't do the things that you need to do. Some caregivers can't leave to go to another room of the home. Um, and or just use the bathroom independently because that
Mm.
separation would be really hard for their child to tolerate. So uh, we look at interference holistically and say, okay, what do we need to and that helps us design our interventions for the family there.
That makes so much sense. And I want to give you a proud mom moment because you're going to love this.
Oh, I can't
We
wait.
we we took our son, he's a freshman in college, so we dropped him off at college for the first time this year. And he later told me that the first 2 weeks he was so homesick. Now he knew not to tell me because it would, right? He knows his mother. So I said, "So how did you cope with that?"
Mhm.
And he said, "Mom, I just knew it was normal and I knew it would get better."
Mhm.
And I just had to tell you that because I was so impressed with him that,
That's amazing.
right? Like just normalizing something like it's okay to feel this way, like being homesick is normal. So,
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
think that's the sort of I clearly you've done so many right things along the way
Hope
or like
so.
helpful things along the way there. I try not to say like right or wrong, but like helpful
Yeah.
things. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because none of us really know what's right. But there are things that are more helpful or less helpful for a
Mm,
situation. But one of the key things I want parents to recommend or to like think about in these moments is approaching these moments when their child is fearful with a combination of two things um, of validation of I understand that this is hard. I get it. You are
mm,
feeling scared. You are worried. We need to validate them. They need to know that we understand their emotional state and that there is room for that emotion. And I know you can do it. Confidence that
the
they can do the
confidence,
things that are hard. It's really the balance of those two things. And I really credit Dr. Ellie Leibovitz from Yale. He has a great program that he runs called Space that really walks a lot of parents through this. But that key combination, you just really can't get away from it. Validation, I get it. I'm here with you. I understand. You feel worried, and I know you can do it. And those two things together are just such a powerful
perfection.
duo.
That
Yeah,
sounds like perfection. That's the parenting perfection combo right there. I love that. I'm
yes.
going to take that with me. So, OCD looks very different in
Mhm.
children. And I think that people don't know what it might present as. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. Well, I think OCD is such an interesting thing to talk about because it has such a presence in the popular like media, right? It
Yes,
has such a
yes.
stereotype of what OCD is. And what's really interesting about OCD is that it is multifaceted. So when we evaluate OCD, we use something called the SIBOX, the Children's Yale Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale. And this it has like many questions and lots of different like areas that you go over. And I think that's one thing that I want families to know that whether we're talking about kids or adults, OCD has a lot of different ways, a lot of different flavors, if you will, um, that it can show up as. So we get the stereotypical like hand washing, worries about germs, that sort of thing. That could be one way that OCD looks. We also
Mm,
see a lot of checking, um, like double checking that I closed the door, or that I did this thing, or that thing's in my backpack, that sort of thing. We also see a lot of what we call scrupulosity. So we all want our kids to be aware of the rules. And for some families who hold religious beliefs, like that is a key value in their family to think about religion and how that shows up in the family. And when we get to like OCD and scrupulosity, it's like taking those rules but amplifying them by 1,000. So and it's far and above the rules or the values that the family holds in their individual culture. So these would, for example, this might be like we're so worried that we're gonna like flip somebody off. because that would be bad. And we all agree, yeah, I don't want my kid to flip somebody off for sure. But our child is so worried that they're going to do that, that they engage in a separate compulsion whenever they have the intrusive thought that they might do that, right?
Mm,
Or it gets in the way because then they start avoiding looking at things or going places where they've had those thoughts before. So screw or like some kids will their family might collectively all pray together, which is fantastic for them and their individual family culture. But when we talk about scrupulosity, this might be like feeling like they have to tell on themselves or pray far more than the family
mhm,
would have, like, is part of their general practice. And starts to interfere in their ability to do other things that are important for them to do in their daily life, like just basic care, like bathe or eat or take care of themselves in other ways. Um, we also, so OCD, I failed to say at the beginning, is both obsessions and compulsions. So obsessions are more like the thoughts that sort of akin to worries, and compulsions are more the repeated action or behavior. And that can be something overt that you see and something covert, like in your head, like counting things over and over again, or repeating a phrase or a song in your head every time this thought comes up, for example. They can be connected, they cannot be connected, but the key is that they become so overwhelming that they interfere in your life and cause a lot of distress. What's hard about OCD, for the general public, I think, is that one, we have these stereotypes. And if you don't match that stereotype, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, that's not OCD. And I'm like, here to tell you, OCD can look a lot of different ways. There are a lot of different flavors. And you don't have to have every scoop in your cone, so to speak. Um, the other piece is that we see repetitive behavior in kids for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're just learning, right? So they want to read the same book at bedtime. My son is obsessed with the
mhm.
Princess in Black series. I don't know if you've read the series. It
Oh,
is
my kids. Yeah, my kids read
so
that.
good.
Yeah.
The Hale writers and illustrators are so great. But so he is obsessed with this book series and he loves to read it every night, right? The difference between that and a compulsive bedtime routine is that we could switch it up. We can read
Mm,
that in a different order, or we can read a different book, or we can read just a chapter. When it comes to OCD and like bedtime rituals and routines, it becomes so rigid that any deviation causes a major meltdown, or you have to start over from the beginning and you have to repeat everything exactly the way that it's supposed to happen, and then it starts to majorly interfere with sleep onset or just like how much sleep is available for any of us to get. So parents' sleep can be impacted too. So
mhm,
I just want to give you a couple examples of what that looks like. The other thing that I tend to see in pediatric OCD is that parents get pulled in to the rituals a lot more than for adults. Because we live together, we help our kids with their daily lives a whole lot more than you might for the average adults. So parents get wrapped into bedtime or morning routines or rituals, and we like really desperately want to get out the door. So it's really easy to accommodate
to
some of
shut
that
you up.
stuff. Yes,
Yes.
come on, we gotta go.
Yep.
And so finding the time and place to challenge that is hard, and we just like are so intertwined in each other's lives that that's, I think, another piece. And we might talk about this as we go on, but we call it parental accommodation, which means that we're not accommodating our child, we're doing what OCD wants us to do, we're doing what anxiety wants us to do, and that's what
Yeah.
keeps anxiety and OCD along a little bit more. So those are some of the different things I would want people to keep in mind when it comes to OCD. We see kids like do other repetitive behaviors, like line up their toys or do things in a certain color order. And I think the key to keep in mind there is that there are a lot of different motivations for why a child might do that. They might just like it, and it's not associated with distress.
Mm,
Importantly, OCD is associated with distress. It's like the cousin of our anxiety disorders. So it's like, I have to do it this way. And if it's messed up, like I can't, like, it's super hard to move on. It's a just not right sort of feeling. And I have to fix it. It has to be this certain way. And when we get, and sometimes we just, kids don't have a lot of control over their environment. So they have things where they just want it to be their certain way. Having my toys in this space is the thing I get to control in my life generally because I am 5 and there's just like not a lot out there that I get to control, you
True.
know? Um,
Hmm.
so sometimes we're not even super sure, but if you're noticing that these are situations that are causing your child a lot of distress, it might be worth checking in with somebody about that because we can do some little sort of behavioral experiments to try to suss out like, is this
Yeah.
fairly typical child? Like, I just want my room to be my space and like don't mess with my stuff, but like I can move it around when I want to. Or is it like we're all sort of governed by OCD in this moment and then we want to intervene a little differently?
Well, that is a fabulous explanation because I think parents don't always know,
Mm.
is this
Sure.
OCD? Am I? And it's used so common. I don't, as a professional, we don't
Sure.
like
We
every
don't like it.
professional, we don't like it that it's just kind of thrown around as this common term, a lot of times inappropriately. So,
100%.
so I love that
100%.
you're right. It's not a common, hopefully, it's not a common word that most families can use. Hopefully, it's not that common, I hope.
Well,
But
I think it's sorry to interrupt you. I
no,
think
go
it's
ahead.
it's more common than I think families realize. And um I want people to be aware of the meaning of their words, right? It's sort of
Yes,
this double-edged sword with like social
yes,
media and how popular things have gotten,
like
is
throwing it
that
around.
right, people throw it around. And so like on one hand, it sort of can feel diminishing or can sort of mislabel a lot of things as OCD or anxiety. And on the other hand, it also acts as like a stigma breaker. So
Yes,
we
that's
really
true.
sit in the dialectic here
That's
between these
excellent.
two things
Hmm.
because then people are more willing to say the words when they need to say the words. Because
That
I
is
also don't want
true.
people to avoid the words when it applies to them. Because here's the thing, anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, these are not lifetime disorders. These are changeable things. We
Mm.
have a lot of knowledge and research about how we can work toward change. Now, so for some people, it's not that easy. It might feel like I'm overselling the treatment plan here, but in general, I want folks to know that these are changeable. And that's one of the things that bothers me when people say like, "Oh, I'm so OCD," is that like it's not a part of our identity. It is an
Yes, that
experience that we have,
exactly.
but I
Yes.
don't want it to be a part of our identity because it's a descriptor for a distressing problem and it is something that is changeable. It's not something that with, our ardent hope is that with a lot of good intervention, um, we would be able to change that and make it so that you don't meet criteria for OCD should one actually meet criteria.
Well, and I think people need hope. So I
Yes.
appreciate you giving that to them.
Yeah.
And I know that OCD is it's interference with life, and they need a professional to help. However, whether it's anxiety or OCD, how do we helpfully respond without enabling or making it worse? What would be a helpful parent response?
So, such a great question. Well, first I'd start with validating where your kid is coming from. So where validating means like meeting them in that moment and notifying and labeling and just like you're there with them. Like, I get it. You're feeling anxious. You're feeling worried. You're feeling really upset. Um, you're reflecting the words that they're saying back to you. So if they're saying like, I am so stressed out about this, like you are so stressed out. I
Mhm.
hear you. You are hearing them in that moment. That is an incredibly important first step. If we start anywhere else, it becomes like this, like, oh, you don't understand me. Like they don't quite get it. Like we need to show them and really genuinely meet them where they are and understand that this is a difficult thing for them. And importantly for parents, I want them to know that validating the emotion does not mean that you agree with how their behavior or like what happens next, or that you agree that this should be anxiety provoking for them. You're just saying, I get it that this is where you are right now. So validating their emotions, expressing confidence, as we talked before, like, I get this is, you feel really anxious and I know you can do it. Um, a key component here is when it comes to anxiety and OCD, the most important thing that we do to help our kids address whatever's happening. And we can generalize this from like the like subclinical, like typical levels of anxiety to all the way through like clinical levels of anxiety or OCD. We want to help our kids face the things that are hard for that are feeling anxiety provoking for them, as long as that situation is safe, is like objectively safe, right? So we wouldn't want them to like walk into traffic. It's understandable that they would feel anxious about that. That anxiety is helpful. And that's, I think, a key component to remember is that our anxiety is not one of the reasons why it's not necessarily all bad, is that it is our body's natural alarm system. It's like the fire alarm in your house, the smoke alarm in your house. It is there for an important reason. The problem is that for some people, the alarm is just going off way more than it needs to be going off, right? A lot of false alarms. And if you have a child where you're starting to notice these false alarms going off, what we need to do is help them stay in the moment to realize that this is a false alarm. They need that experiential learning to learn through experience that this is a false alarm and retrain their brain. And I give kids, when I talk about them, I give them this example that in one of our old homes, the smoke alarm would go off every time somebody took a shower, which was really unfortunate and
Oh my
really,
goodness.
it was not great. Also, you can't see her, she's off camera, but I have a husky, so she is also very vocal. And so like anytime anyone's taking a shower, it was a whole production, right?
Oh,
But not a reason for me to suddenly wrap my towel around me and leave the house, right? I
right.
needed that awareness to say, like, this is something is faulty about how this is all set up, right? The steam is setting it off, and my dog is amplifying it. This is a false alarm. And so, in what the benefit of being an adult in this situation is that we can look at these situations and we have the experience, we have the hindsight, insight, and foresight to be able to understand fairly reasonably whether this is a false alarm or a true alarm. Like, this is a dangerous thing, don't do it. If it's a dangerous thing, I don't want you to encourage your kid to do it, right? But if this is an objectively safe thing, like trying out for the volleyball team, there might be some hard things that happen, right? We might not make the team, we might mess up, but those aren't objectively dangerous to us, right? So we, as the adults in the situation, our job is to provide some scaffolding to encourage our children to approach rather than avoid. Essentially, to do the opposite of what anxiety and OCD is telling them to do in that situation. The clinical term for all of this is called exposure. But so if you do consult Dr. Google later, just know that that is what you should be looking at. But the exposure is the key element for addressing anxiety or OCD. It's really the most important component. And in doing that, you have this opportunity to have an experience that changes, like you have an expectation coming into this experience, like volleyball tryouts, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to embarrass the crap out of myself, right? Like, this is not going to be good for me. As a theater kid, I was not an athlete, so this would not have been very good for me personally. So coming to this worry, I have this expectation that I'm going to embarrass myself and mess up, and I go and try it, and I see what happens. Was that true? Did I have an experience that showed me that there were other possibilities? And that's what our job is as parents. We are never going to convince them with our words
No,
that don't feel anxious, like don't worry about it. All of that is comes from a really loving place and is ultimately, I'm here to say, not that helpful. Mostly because our kids As much as we would love for them to learn from our past experiences and wisdom, they have to learn through their own experiences. And when we say things like, oh, don't worry, it's not that bad, nothing bad will happen, two things happen. We end up invalidating their emotional experience when we say, oh, don't worry. They're like, number one, how do you just not worry? I don't know
Right.
anybody who has been like, oh, if you
Doesn't
told me to
work.
stop, okay, now it's over.
Right.
And then
Exactly.
the other thing is that we actually can't predict the future either. So something bad might happen. Like I might not make the volleyball team. And hey, that might be a hard thing that I learned that I can cope with. So I think it's really important that parents approach it, like validate these emotions, express that confidence, and like present and opportunities for their kids to have these learning opportunities to encourage them to face rather than avoid. The other thing that I think parents can do is watch, it goes back to my earlier point, but watch the reassurance that you tend to give. Because again, we are not built to tolerate our kids in distress, just like adaptively. We're built to rescue them. That's how our
Yes,
species
it's
survived,
true.
right? It's
Yes.
just that,
Yes.
like, these days are the things that cause distress are much more nuanced. They're not life or death events. And actually, these are things our kids need to face in order to cope with the breadth of life, right? They don't have to do the hardest thing first. We can step them in so they can experience success and maybe stay at the table for these experiences. Um, but when we provide just like blanket reassurance, um, it tends to, again, it tends to not be very effective, and like be invalidating for our kids who are just like, this is just still really hard. But the other thing that can happen on sort of the opposite side of the coin is that our kids can learn that they only cope through our reassurance. Like we become the thing that they need to cope. And like that might feel kind of great in the moment for for us as like our sweet babies. You still need me. But ultimately they need to be in the world. They're going to be places where we are not, right? They're going to be at school, they're going to be at their friend's house, they're going to be in these other environments, and we're not going to be right there next to them to provide them with coping. So they need to find some resources and skills within themselves to cope with these moments. So when we just say like, provide the reassurance. I'm trying to think of a good example here. So a common place where I see parents giving a lot of reassurance around a very common worry is the weather. It's like, is there going to be a tornado today? Is there going to be an earthquake today? And
Oh,
parents are like, no, no, no. There's not going to be a tornado today. There's not going to be an earthquake today. It's New Jersey. It's pretty rare here for us to get tornadoes. So like, no, no tornado today. So if every day my child is coming to me saying, is there going to be a tornado today? And I say, nope, no tornado today. I checked. Then they've learned that I am the reason that they can cope with the day because I've asked the question. Instead of doing that, I might say, what do you think?
mm,
What is the evidence that there would be a tornado today? What is the evidence that there's no tornado today? What happened yesterday? When was the last time there was a tornado in New Jersey? So asking these questions helps them reason through to arrive at their own answer rather than us providing the reassurance for them. And
so
this,
good.
I'm going to tell you, this is going to annoy the crap out of your first time you do it, right? Like they're going to be,
I want the answer.
yes, what are you doing? Come on, just tell me.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
hard. So I think it's fair, as if you find yourself that you're in one of these routines, it is fair and okay to acknowledge to your kid, hey, I was thinking about all our questions about tornadoes every morning. I'm going to try it a different way because I'm thinking that there might be a more helpful way to do this. So next time you ask me, I'm going to ask you the question. And some kids will just find this really hard and they will need to, um, they will keep asking. And so we will do other things like we will set up plans for them to ask fewer questions and be rewarded for asking fewer reassurance seeking questions. It doesn't mean we'll never give our kids reassurance, right? It just means that we're more mindful of the pattern that we are setting up for them and how we're promoting their own coping as we do that.
Yeah. There's a joke in my house about my praise and reassurance. I have to tone it down over here. I really do. I'm working on it. That was really helpful. I'm working on this. My husband's praise means so much more to them because it's not as common, because mom's over here going, you're
Well, I love that too. I think one of the things that as we do all of this, as we
yeah,
help our kids cope with hard things, you brought up something so important, Rebecca, which is catching our kids making brave steps, even if they're the tiniest step,
yes, yes.
even anything that they're doing that you're like, I know you and I know that this thing is hard for you. Recognize that in a way that your kid is going to hear. Like, all of your kids are different, all of them receive praise differently. My two kids are very different. My son loves the loud cheerleader, like, what, you did it, I'm so proud of you. My daughter hates it. She
Yeah,
would rather I not. But if
right.
I like come up next to her and I'm like, that was amazing, I love how you did XYZ. And then that is very much her speed. But importantly, labeling what they did that was so great. Like,
Mm.
that was such, I am so proud of you for, I don't know,
Taking
not,
that very hard test that
yes,
she took yesterday.
yes,
Yes,
exactly.
yes,
You showed up. Whatever the outcome of that test, you
yes.
showed up, you sat in that chair and you did it.
Hmm.
I'm so proud of you for
Exactly.
that.
Yes,
I
yes.
think that praise, um, is so important. And it helps us, our children, refocus like what they might be focusing on their attention on, which is like, go instead of focusing on like, this feels so hard, focusing on, this feels hard and look what I did.
And you
And
did
look
it.
what I'm doing right now. Like, I'm here. I both things can be true at once. We're such mental health providers. Like, we sit in the dialectic always, right? Like, these two truths both exist. This is hard and I am doing it.
Yes.
Um, so I think that is when our praise enters the room, that helps them refocus their attention on what they are doing well.
I agree. I agree over here. And I have to, while I have you, we have to
Sure.
talk about the children's meltdowns
Okay.
because, you're helping us with so many things. Help us with the meltdowns because
Oh,
they
sure.
happen, I think they happen at a lot of different ages. So,
Yes, they
so
sure
tell
do.
us like the most helpful response. So we're not doing it wrong.
Well, I think this there are a few things that I would want families to think about. And it certainly, when we think about meltdowns, there might, for all of your kids who are all different ages and have all different abilities and backgrounds and things that they bring to the table. um, some of our kids might be neurodivergent, some of our kids might be neurotypical. There are a lot of different things that are motivating to our kids. So I would, as I talk about some broad strokes here, I just want our listeners to think about, to really sit in the fact that you are the expert on your child. So as I talk about some of this stuff, exactly how it applies to your child is really like pull from that expertise, and think about how this applies. When we think about these meltdowns, we really think about the ABCs of behavior: the antecedent, like what happens before; the B, the behavior, the thing that's feeling really hard, the big behavior moment here; and the consequences, the C, what happens after. And in some of these big moments that we can have in our homes, certainly I've had them too. I'm not immune to having seen my own children have big meltdowns and big moments, for sure. They are human beings too. Um, there can be lots of ABCs throughout, like lots of little moments. So, okay. So what I want families to think through is how, as if you think back to the most recent big behavioral moment, the big meltdown that you experienced at your house, what was happening right before? What what was the issue about? Was it about setting a limit? Was it about somebody entering their space? Was it about having to pivot to a non-preferred task? Was it about having a non-preferred sensory experience? What was happening? And like, what were the other people doing in the situation? What were they saying? Where were they standing? Like all of these, we sort of map it out like a play, like what was happening there, so that we can chain things back to when the meltdown started to happen. And then the consequences, what did we do next? How did we respond to that? Right. And the key here, and again, remember, we're all giving ourselves grace in this moment, is that we cannot directly control our child's behavior. They are their own person, they have their own free will. But what we can control is the A and the C. We can control what we do and some of the things that happen in the environment, not all things, but some things that happen before that big behavioral moment, that big meltdown situation, and some of the things that happen after. Um, and so some of it, so as we think about these big moments, when you're already in it, when the meltdown is already happening, most of the time I want parents to do less than they feel inclined to do. A lot of times when we feel like, I have to stop this, I have to turn this around, I have to make it quite, I have to make it better, we end up escalating the situation inadvertently. We, of course, don't mean to, or worsening it or prolonging it, even though, uh, our intention is to do something different. Most of the time, I want parents, if you find yourself already in the meltdown, I want parents to pause. Unless there is something overtly dangerous happening, then of course, please intervene immediately. But if there's nothing overtly, if people are safe in the moment, I want you to pause. I want you to focus on regulating yourself first. Um, because if you jump in feeling like I have to do this, I have to change something about this first, we are not regulated, we are going to probably
Make it
escalate
work.
the situation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're probably going to make it worse. So most of the time I just want to pause and stop. And sometimes I mean, it truly is okay to, as long as everybody is objectively safe, to let our children like be in that moment for a minute and sort of ride the wave of that emotion. We talk about riding the wave of emotions a lot here. Um, and the key is like, if you think about, I'm going to use a really cheesy example, but imagine the last time you were in the ocean and you were standing like waist deep and there's a wave coming at you. When you tried to push back that wave, what happened? Were you ever successful at pushing the wave back into the ocean? No, it probably splashed you right in the face. You got water up your nose, you got all turned around. But instead, so that's us like trying to push this wave of emotion back, make it better, change it. Instead, if we turn around and we say, like, okay, wave, I'm going to ride you, I'm going to ride this wave in. When we ride the wave of that emotion, we're not trying to change it or push it away. It crests and then it calms and it rides us into shore. And in that moment, as we ride the wave, we can also see the horizon, which means we can see other things that are happening in the environment much more than if we were trying to push that wave back and change it. So imagine that wave. Remember that it's okay to ride the wave of these emotions, again, as long as everybody is safe in this moment. Because, and then as your child calms, um, I want you to find a space later to think about what you want to do differently. But in that moment, as your child calms, you can gently, in a way that your child can hear, praise the things that they are starting to like regain control over. Thank you for holding a safe body. I see you worked really hard to do that. I hear you asking me that in a calm voice. Thank you so much. I'm happy to get you a glass of water. Or whatever it is. Like we are returning to praising the things. Um, and then a lot of the key is like the antecedent, focusing on what happens before. How can we set up the environment for success so that we can make this go better next time, whether that's warnings before a transition or
Hmm.
a set schedule with maybe some visuals, or, there are so many different ideas, probably more than I have time for today to like talk through of like how you can change what happens in the environment before um, the big meltdown happens. But outside of all of that, one of the things that I just can't overstate is how important your relationship is with your child. And I don't say that out of like a guilt, like it should be important, but in a this is the most powerful tool you have at your disposal. You are the most powerful person in your child's life, way more powerful than we as the mental health professionals will ever be. And I don't want to be the powerful person in your child's life. That is a throne specifically for you. And the key thing to remember about that is that that can also be a how we work to improve this is through your relationship. So one of the very first things we talk about with families who come into our offices, where they're coming in saying like there are all these big meltdowns, I don't know what to do, is we work with parents to say, okay, we're going to focus on positive reinforcement, so catching your child being good, and we're going to focus on special one-on-one time. So spending time, it doesn't have to be more than 5 minutes a day. That's what the research says. So if you're like, oh my God, I have to do all this
You're like,
homework,
when? Yeah.
where's the time to do anything? 5 minutes a day. Most people can find 5 minutes to have special time with your child where you are truly joining with them in a task that they're directing. They get to be in control over this. Again, we have to be, there's some tips around like what activities are kind of lend themselves for this a little bit more than others. So, but we can get a little flexible here depending on your child's age and interests, but really focusing on making sure that we are spending that time to connect where we are not asking them questions, we are not making commands or criticizing their actions in that moment. We are just joining with them to praise them, reflect what you're hearing from them, engage with them in an activity that they're leading. Again, if you're going to be on Dr. Google, sometimes this is referred to as special time or one-on-one time, and we can adapt it for different ages and interests. But that time is so powerful because there are a lot of intricacies I haven't talked about for like what you do during special time, but it really helps um, us build off of this incredible relationship you have with your child to show them exactly that they are capable of doing the things that we might need them to do, or that might be more adaptive for them to do in different situations by praising them in all those little places where we see it. Like we are, um, but sometimes we're really attuned to catching the moments where a child is not doing the thing that we want them to do or the thing that's not going well. We're busy. We have a lot of other things that we're managing in our lives. So sometimes if things are moving swimmingly, we're just like, okay, let it be. Um, and then when things go awry, we're like, oh, okay, don't do that. Let's stop that, or let's do this differently. Um, and instead, we try to flip it on our heads and instead catch our child doing things well with our praise, just as you were talking about with your kids, Rebecca. I think that's so important to say, like, I love that you came and sat at the table without me even having to ask for dinner. But that's amazing. Or thank you for turning off your device the first time I asked. I really appreciate that. Like these little things that might happen, even if it's as small as you walked to the table today. Thank you so much for walking to the table or whatever it
Yep.
is. Like
Catch it.
you might feel
Catch
like
it.
you're finding little moments to praise of what they're doing well is so powerful. And we want to think about a ratio of having like way more praise to any like corrective statement that we might still need to make.
Oh my
Thank you
goodness.
much. I feel better.
You are just, I knew you were going to be amazing. When I read all about you, I was like, I can't wait for this one. I knew I was going to keep you too long. I know
Oh,
you
it's fine.
have, it's, I kept you way longer than I told you, but I
Oh,
just
all good.
loved talking to you, loved
Same.
all of the information. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, and
Yeah.
I know how busy you are. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this with me
Oh,
today.
Such my pleasure. This is my favorite thing. As much as I certainly have a soft spot in my heart for our kids with anxiety and OCD for sure, but more importantly to me than anything is helping families understand the information that's out there. The things, it is hard to access resources for mental health care. We know. And part of what inspires me to come to work every day is to think about how we can change the system. And what you're doing here by giving a platform for people to come share information and talk about ideas is one of those ways that we change the system by helping families access information in a way that might feel a little bit like it resonates with them. So hopefully that resonated with some of your listeners. And I'm sure, no doubt, your other guests have messages that will resonate with others. But I think this is such a powerful tool for doing exactly that, getting this information, these tips, these techniques more accessible to everybody.
Well, thank you. You just made my day saying that because that is a huge goal of mine.
Of
So
course.
thank you so much.
My
Keep
pleasure.
doing your amazing work in this universe. This is
Okay.
Rebecca Greene, and I want to remind everyone to spend every day laughing, learning, and loving. Thank you for tuning in to the Whiny Palooza podcast. If you like what you heard, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. While you are there, leave a review. I love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.